Wisdom of Wellness, Perpetuity of Poise of Purpose by Santosh Jha. Thrilled to have you with me. I feel truly happy to tell you that I do not intend to be a book. Rather, it is like friends chatting up, sharing whatever we can together to enhance the wellness space. It is my humble belief that any person, in whatever state of consciousness and positioning, is in some special ways better than a wisdom book, for the purpose of life and living learning. I must tell you, I have learnt and more importantly, unlearnt, primarily from people. Books somehow are people material in text format. Wellness is a function of wider poise of person and personality, which includes factors not only material but also emotional. A person is in complete wellness when there is an overall poise between the cognitive factors such as income, wealth, comfort, leisure and health, as well as emotional factors such as trust, security, integration with family, friends, colleagues, connectivity, communication, stability, sense of desirability and spiritual purpose, etc. We live in a modern, complex world, where cognitive elements of good life are improving considerably. However, as emotional elements of life and living are largely unsettled and conflicted, most of us fail to hit the road of the perpetuity of poise for larger wellness. Wellness involves a large spectrum of poise in multidimensional domains: the spiritual, physical, mental, social and emotional. Moreover, the emotional and spiritual aspect of wellness is far more complex than the cognitive ones, as they are the intangibles of life. Wellness is a dynamic idea. It is a goal of life, for which we all need to strive every day. Wellness is not a static state. It is not like wealth, which we acquire once and keep it for long. It requires ongoing attention and timely intervention to the details of evolving social, spiritual and physical life. Wellness as a holistic notion of physical, emotional as well as ideational prosperity does not mean only lack of impediments to good life, but also having loads of ingredients of good life. For wellness, positivity is far more crucial than simple lack of negativity. Wellness is well within the reach of all of us, yet we all need to constantly redefine ourselves as well our notion of wellness, as our minds and bodies evolve to optimize capacities and excellence. Wellness is essentially a consciousness positioning. It is not an external or tangible entity, which one can create like wealth. Wellness is a poise of consciousness, which is engendered when we have all elements of our life, physical, emotional, ideational and material, in perfect harmony and symmetry with each other. We are ourselves a very complex mechanism. The world we live in has also become hugely complicated and conflicted. The cosmic realism is awesomely complex. Wellness poise needs to connect with all these and then strike a lasting poise. This poise is not static but dynamic, constantly evolving and changing. Only that person can attain perfect wellness and remain in perpetuity of it, who understands all the mechanisms in details and then uses the wisdom to create a wellness model for himself or herself. This is not possible for everyone. That is why there always has been a model of wellness for average person to follow. Not everyone can create his or her own model of wellness. In the past, religion was one huge support system and a for-all wisdom for our larger wellness, as it had a prescribed action behavior model to guide the emotional as well as physical aspects of larger wellness, accepted by large majority. Religion happens to be the facility for body-mind wellness, which prescribed a common wellness model for all, explainable in terms of set benchmarks of action behavior. However, this space is growingly being taken over by spiritualism, as religion seems to be losing ground among young, especially in urban space. The fact remains that be it religion or spiritualism, any larger ideational support system for humanity needs to have a secular and contemporary common sense for larger humanity, as only then it can be of use for attaining overall wellness poise. Traditional religion as well as spiritualism is proving out as insufficient facilities for wellness needs of average person, as both fail to conform to modern and liberal ideas of prevailing culture. The popular complaint is that both facilities are no more in sync with contemporary common sense as much of their wisdom is now in conflict and contradiction to modernist liberal realisms. However, it is a dire need of humanity as wellness is something most affected in modern times. We just need to revisit and redefine the old wisdoms of religion and spiritualism and realign the old wisdom to modern contemporary knowledge. We shall talk in details here, how the old wisdom still has lot to offer to our wellness needs and how we all can create our own personalized and subjective model of spiritualism and religion, taking wellness ideas from old as well as new wisdoms of humanity. We just have to come out of our popular mindset, which considers religion and spiritualism as some sort of external behavior action rule. It just has to be our common sense of wellness, which is an internalized conscious positioning of mind. This alone can make all of us to be the master of mechanism. We talk here about spiritualism and religion, which most people accept as a serious, complex and mystifying idea, something which is approachable only by an external intellectualism and is beyond popular and temporal common sense. As your friend, I humbly and very affectionately request you to please drop the guard. Spiritualism, as we shall talk in details here, as against the popular notion, is beautifully simple, innately internal, innocently explicable, highly amusing and smoothly part of our contemporary and modern common sense. That is why, each of us can create a subjective and personalized wellness model, which is a better situation than accepting an old model, which has been proving not so useful in modern world. The very mechanism we have, our consciousness, the cosmic realism and our juxtapositioning in it, engenders an associated plexus of logical questions on wellness needs. The popular belief is, spiritualism must have all answers and the right ones. You already know that the two notions answer and right are very subjective emotions. Still, the expectations are the same with all wisdoms, religion, philosophy as well as sciences. This pop belief is calamitous. We are always sure, if a wisdom does not have all answers, especially the right ones, it cannot be wisdom. The paradox is, all wisdoms somehow claim to have all answers and the right ones, still, no wisdom could ever be one singular and all-acceptable wisdom of humanity. For an innocent mind, not given to the narcissism of intellectualism, it is clear that if there could be problems with the answers of all the wisdoms, there can also be something wrong with our questions, or the way we accept answers. After all, what is the right answer of right questions is finally what we accept as the right one. The first thing, which we all need to unlearn with absolute innocence, is this popular belief. In contemporary times, when we have a reasonably sound understanding of how our consciousness works and how this cosmic realism operates, we need to first question how we create our questions and why. We also need to revisit the popular notions about religion, mysticism and spiritualism. We shall talk here about how we all are a mystic, spiritualist, in some special way and how we can personalize our own model of spiritualism to enhance our wellness quotient. We shall talk about completely new dimensions and facets of a new spiritual within us, who redefines all prevailing aspects of spiritualism with a holistic, assimilative and integrative perspective. This shall talk of personalized and subjective wellness wisdom, which shall engender a perpetuity of poise, peace, purpose and prosperity not only with the self but also with the cosmic realism. This model shall not only have the right answers but also the right questions. We shall talk in details about all these. However, first, we have to come down to one common premise, which shall help us is the fruition of the issue at hand, to be in perpetuity of wellness, peace and excellence. There has to be a humble admittance, any word, however well meant and well spelt, is a possible suspect of misrepresentation. There is a simple reason. Do you remember when your flight is about to land, the pilot aborts the landing, jolting your peace, just because something as insignificant as a stray dog happens to be on the runway? You already know how similar is the fate of human words, which we all accept as the best and worthy carriers of human intentions. This airplane of human words, carrying good and noble intentions, need to make a good, smooth and safe landing on the runway of another human's mind and consciousness, which again is worthy and hugely able. Still, the good intention words sometimes fail to land on the mind of others, as there is some insignificant, yet potentially fatal obstacle standing midway the runway. It is believed, if the hypothesis is right, the idea is accepted as right. If two people have an assimilative and integrative attitude, one can easily see that root trouble is in subjectivity of the hypotheses. This helps in resolution of conflict of ideas. Friendship is one positioning, where assimilation and integration about divergent hypotheses has larger accommodative space. A seed is more objectively accommodative in space than a grown-up tree. Friendship is seed positioning. That is why, at the very start, I very affectionately requested you to be my friend and accept this all as one long conversation between friends. Kindly, accept this not as a book but a confabulation between friends. This, I am confident, shall engender smoothness of navigation and fruition of the entire exercise. The confabulation over the sensitive issue of spiritualism can be fruitful only when you have an open mind about new thoughts and you know it. With a friend, you are most comfortable and opened up. As a friend, I must tell you, I have put up a price tag on it to fund my charity endeavors. All proceeds from this and other works of mine shall go to charity. With all humility and sincerity at my behest, I wish to tell you, it needs to be said that there is only one person on the earth, who can say that he has understood. Otherwise, this domain is reserved for a metaphor called God. This is not available for humans. It is also a heartfelt realization that our very worthy ancestors, who had the intelligence and courage to face the worst, life made them to, so that we inherit a better beautiful world, have already said almost all good things. What I can do is present them in new set of words with novelty of contemporary references. The only justification of me telling them is that all goodness and wellness ideas and words need to be repeated and retold, to add to their all-pervasiveness. At the age of 46, I can say with innocence that getting old is such a beautiful and satisfying experience. It makes the self accept the utility and fruition of holistic, assimilative and integrative consciousness. Getting old has probably pushed me close to the eligibility of perhaps beginning to understand as what essentially is there to be understood. I chat up with you to share with you whatever is part of my consciousness. All wisdoms say, human is designed to live in state of flux, a state of instinctive semi-consciousness. To jolt oneself out of this, one must challenge itself, something humanity has done since millions of years. What stays with you is what sinks in. Wisdom is what we internalize. I share with you whatever I have internalized in my life. Contemporary trends. We talk first in short about the contemporary trends in societies across the globe to understand why there is an express need for a completely updated and upgraded version of contemporary religion and spiritualism as a wellness support system for all of us. This also helps you to evolve a personalized and subjective model of spiritualism and religion, as a platform for larger wellness wisdom. As we talked earlier, every one of us has the innate need and positioning to be a spiritualist. However, modern contemporary societal trends engender the need to revisit and reinvent the traditional spiritual notions to realign and upgrade them as suiting to contemporary common sense. Few years back, some visionaries came out with a researched report on the future trends that would prevail in the global society. This report suggested, traditional ideas of religion shall growingly wither and would be replaced by spiritualism. It suggested, the contemporary choice of liberalism and very powerful communication technologies shall help spread of modern scientific temper. This would make many in urbanized and educated societies reject the outdated tenets of classical religions all over the globe. Recent surveys in the United States of America and other developed societies have already confirmed that majority of young and urbanized liberal people have termed themselves spiritual, rather than religious. It was also predicted that though religion would lose out to spiritualism in future, for an intervening period, mysticism should rise, especially the agnostic mysticism, to fill up the void. This also has become true. This clearly marks one crucial reality of humanity. Everyone needs a wisdom of wellness, and spiritualism, as one mega facility for defining and guiding wellness needs of humanity, has to be there, in one form or other. The terminology can change. Once it was religion, now spiritualism, and later it may be mysticism and any other term. However, most people would need a guiding light in their lives to lead them to answers of larger and ever-present wellness questions. Already, there are voices in the United States of America and in other developed societies, which blames rejection of religion as the prime reason for degeneration of societies and culture. This is debatable, as making or unmaking of societies and culture are functions of multiple factors. One factor cannot be blamed. However, the fact remains that more people are now falling in the grip of troubles, which are a result of diminishing wellness quotient in their lives. No doubt, traditional wisdom of religion spirituality had been a huge platform of wellness wisdom for majority of people for thousands of years, and this platform is fast losing favors with new generations and urban educated and liberal people. We surely need an alternative wellness wisdom. Here, it has to be understood, we live in an age of skepticism. This precarious energy of skepticism is the prime mover in downsizing and upgrading of many contemporary ideas and wisdoms of humanity. Everything is in for a redefinition, thanks to this energy of skepticism. However, it also has to be understood, from where comes this energy of skepticism? This comes from the subjectivity and dualism of questions and answers, which the traditional wisdoms is now unable to address satisfactorily. The questions and the need for answers are transcendental and quintessential. However, with progression of time, the new intellectual milieu changes its association with the prevalent wisdom, as questions get new shades and acceptable common sense of answers to get updated. The skepticism somehow creates a void, as its basic energy is to reject, rather than accept old things in new and improved light. It is only natural that rejection of old wisdom of religion would never be a solution. It has created a void, and as is the natural mechanism, things in static state, from around the milieu, shall rush in to fill up the void. In addition, as is the innate mechanism with such void filling, the rushed energies shall create a muddled up and storm-like situation, for an intervening period. We all have seen such weather phenomenon around us. The prevalent spiritualism, which has filled up the void of religion, is also not a new one, though many protagonists of this new age spiritualism would insist to call it this way. This neo-spiritualism is in fact something already prevailing in the society since long and had been kept at the sidelines, as religion ruled supreme. In fact, as many of us already accept, this neo-spiritualism has a heady mixture of popular tidbits from prevalent religions. There seems not much new in the neo-spiritualism, the thing new is its positioning, a shift from peripheral position to the mainstream. Every now and then, some elements from some other religion are mixed to create a product of neo-spiritualism for the convenience of pop layers of society and markets. As they say, only two things sell hugely in modern world, sex and spiritualism. Both are in for huge experimentations, innovations and brand building. Like, you already have so many similar products in the market, and suddenly a new product comes with almost same utility and value. The producer and the marketing team, however, shall come up with a new brand idea and brand association tools to convince you that this product shall prove to be of larger and better value. Spiritualism also seems to be in for such inventiveness and branding. The fact remains that emotional and spiritual wellness questions, which we all wish the modern and contemporary spiritualism to answer, are still there, and as nothing new has been available, In terms of new value and utility, spiritualism also seems to be slated for the same fate, which religion is undergoing right now. Old wine in a new bottle can add some value and utility for a seasoned drinker for a while, but in the long run, it shall lose its utility. One shall again look for something different, which essentially is a new wine, even if it is in the same old bottle. We need to understand this conundrum. When we understand as why such a powerful and all-pervading influence on human life like religion, is fast losing its magical hold on our consciousness, we shall be in better position to understand what a contemporary spiritualism must have to become a worthy successor of religion, as alternative wellness platform. It is for anyone to understand. For centuries, religious principles satisfied our big questions of life. The questions have been there since thousands of years. They emanate from three broad domains of 3CS, consciousness, cognition, causality. All major questions of humanity, life and living, purpose and utility, right and wrong, ends and means, etc., which essentially decide the broad culture we live in and personal/social goals of life we set for ourselves, have so far been answered by three broad wings of human wisdom: philosophy, religion and psychology. Science is a late entrant, still amenable only for a few. The contemporary worldview/world order and popular cultural edifices have undergone a major and even diametrically opposite paradigm shift, and in the next 3-4 decades, as scientific temper spreads to larger layers of society, religion and even spiritualism, in its current form, is bound to lose favors with people. Largely, the existing culture is based on archetypal human wisdom, provided by the trio of philosophy, religion, psychology, which accepted the cardinal parameters of 3CS in a way, which is now declared either inappropriate/wrong or insufficient and based on instinctive observatory presumptions. Since long, when no civilization and culture was there on Earth, humanity attempted to fix answers emerging from three domains: 3CS, consciousness, who we are and why; cognition, why and how we see and accept what; causality, what, why and how is our relationships with things around us. Thousands of years back, humanity answered the questions on the basis of what they observed and accepted as true, as per their presumptive judgments and existing knowledge. These answers had almost no or little actual/objective/provable basis, yet they seemed true and right. Some greats, however, picked up the right observations and made some real good judgments. They are still treasured and shall always be. These presumptive judgments-based answers became the basis of human civilization and culture, which in time degenerated to good extent. We all have inherited, and our mind consciousnesses have been trained since ages to accept them as true and right. The real wisdom, however, gradually got lost and is now confined in some books only. In modern contemporary times, most of the answers we once accepted about key questions of life and living, purpose and utility, right and wrong, ends and means, success and failures, etc., proved out to be insufficient to satisfy our contemporary common sense. This because the benchmarks on edifices of old wisdom stands to lose grounds as consciousness, cognition and causality benchmarks and actuality for humanity have evolved hugely, thanks to a new liberal and scientific consciousness. The trouble with modern contemporary spiritualism is, it has to be in complete sync with the New Age common sense, which is marked by scientific and objective wisdom. On the other hand, it also has to accept the larger utility and value of good life of the modern and liberal culture, which the old wisdom of religion rejects and sermons against. The 3Cs of humanity, consciousness, cognition and causality have undergone a huge change as modern, liberal and scientific knowledge has evolved and upgraded all three. This evolved 3Cs are in major conflict and clash with the old wisdom, which fails to satisfy the modern contemporary common sense. All this we need to talk about to come to the model of a modern, liberal and scientific spiritualism, as an alternative wellness wisdom, which has completely novel and suitable elements and ideas, in sync with contemporary needs and times. It is only natural that such a new spiritualism has to be a holistic, assimilative and integrative common sense, which shall not reject anything, but assimilate all good things in all wisdoms, based on contemporary and updated benchmarks of evolved 3Cs of consciousness, cognition and causality. We shall talk about all that in detail here. Why religion is misrepresented. Before we talk about redesigning and realigning spiritualism, which could be a huge fit with the idea of contemporary common sense wellness wisdom, we must understand one big thing. This new wellness wisdom shall never reject the old wisdom of religion and philosophy. Rather, it will revisit the old wisdom and find out the core notions of the old wisdom of religions. That is why, it is important that we first talk about why religion lost grounds, even when it was once the ultimate utility for humanity as wellness wisdom. It still has utility. The big blame is on the way core religion was misrepresented and misinterpreted. We talk about it in short. Humanity always had some evolved minds, who rose above the conflicts of life and to whom the singular answers of critical questions of humanity as well as the cosmos were revealed. Important it is that the revelations to a handful get eventually transformed into a logical and patterned knowledge for all of humanity. This has always been missing till now, presenting the real challenge for humanity. The new spiritualism enlists this as doable. It is like, in an exam, you know the answer of a mathematical question and you write that in the answer sheet, but the examiner would not give you any marks for that. You need to write down the entire process of how you arrived at the right answers. Just knowing the right answers fetches no marks. Even in life, we think we have the answers, but as we miss the right process, results are disappointing. This has always happened to a few great minds in human civilization. They knew right answers but not the right process, none of their fault. The mechanism could not be known to them. That is why, there came the trilogy of known unknown unknowable premise. Those who truly arrived at the right answers could not detail the right process, and that is why they said, real wisdom is only revealed to individuals and cannot be converted into a collective knowledge for all. It is unknowable but can only be revealed. This proposition still holds good for larger humanity. But we now have the knowledge of mechanism, to lay down the right processes for the right answers. The larger humanity accepts this known unknown unknowable premise as truth, be it religion, spiritualism, philosophy or psychology. It resulted into a very beautiful but also very dangerous proposition for humanity. Those who arrived at the wisdom and when right answers were revealed to them, it was only very natural and instinctive that their minds were filled with compassion, as they could see the larger humanity suffering partly from lack of resource but largely because of widespread and deep ignorance. They felt so full of compassion to see that ignorance is making the very potent and positive energy of conflict into a potent weapon of mass destruction and resultant pain and misery. They chose a way out which, like conflict, created more chaos and confusion than order and peace, which was intended. Many of those, who arrived at right answers but did not know the process, chose not to speak. They were never sure what was revealed to them were actually right or not, as they could not establish its procedural veracity. As they say, the wise is never sure and the stupid is always. The wise is always responsible. Many of them were also fearful of the social backlash, as even now, larger humanity is full of vengeance and violence for nonconformists. Still, a few chose to speak, mostly out of compassion for the larger ignorance of wider humanity. However, it was impossible even for them to put the wisdom into words that larger humanity could understand and accept. Therefore, what they said was mostly in the language of metaphors and symbols. Why they chose to say it all in metaphors and symbol? It has a reason. Very early in human evolution, when humans had not even developed language, some of the more evolved brains could detect and establish that there was a pattern all around them in immediate nature, which they could decipher. It was revealed to a few. The later humans also understood it, and they chose to express it in metaphors and symbols. Usually, early metaphors were derived from nature. As language was developed, they put up language metaphors. It is understandable, as metaphors were most easily replicable even for an unarrived brain. The knowledge of process facilitates replication. It had to be, as there was a discernible pattern of cosmos, which were replicable in nature. Even later, when language was developed quite well, the metaphors took the shape of verse, not prose, as brain would accept the verses more easily. That is why all ancient human documents or oral traditions of wisdom were written in verse style. The metaphor model also shielded the wise from societal backlash, as these models were above the popular languages. Metaphors are replicable patterns, and they are all around us to understand easily. For example, we are told, the life is like a jungle and we have to make our own roads to success by clearing the bushes and trees. And how this success comes. This comes when we as a brain, prune or unlearn some of the info of our subconscious as well as the cultured mind, and create a path of higher consciousness. There is also an oriental spiritual metaphor of the world being a myojal plexus of senses. This matches with the scientific pattern of brain functioning, in which brain creates a huge branching network of axons, dendrites and synapses. A good and rational human being, a prudent mind, has to rise above this network created by a subconscious mind with the help of higher consciousness, to engender new synaptic avenues. We are all told how most get lost in this jungle and few succeed in creating the right path. They chose metaphors because brain accepts most things as pictorial and relates it as templates. That is why metaphors, which abound in nature around us and can be seen from bare eyes, were chosen. Eyes feed large majority of sensory inputs to the brain. Despite the worthy compassion of the ancient wise men and their brilliance in selecting excellent metaphors and symbols for laying out the processes of the wisdom they acquired, the average human could not benefit, as the processes were very subjectively received. Scientific answers, when laid as procedures, have singular and objective reception by all minds, and that is why the technology is universal, even while languages are different. As these ancient metaphors and symbols lacked objectivity and singularity of reception by all minds, and every individual mind accepted them in its own subjective interpretation, they could never be replicated by the society at large. These rather engendered multiplicity of expressions and actions, creating bad replica in the forms of calamitous rituals, which now are huge burdens for larger humanity. The metaphor system of wisdom dispensation was good only for the arrived brains, but for the majority of the common masses, even this metaphor was a matter of great misunderstanding and conflict. That is why ancient wisdom is the most misinterpreted and bears more conflict of mind than order. Religion and spiritualism remain confused and conflicting domains, ridden with precarious rituals, all competing to be the right one, at the cost of the denial of others. Sadly, as is with almost every human enterprise, some of the unscrupulous elements of society at all times used this confusion, conflict and misinterpretation for their own petty and selfish ends. The religion, spiritualism and philosophy have always fallen on the hands of some of these elements and some confused people. The humanity has always suffered. These selfish elements converted these meaningful metaphors into set of rituals, which were masterly designs to suit individuals, and a group of individuals who wished not religion but its ownership. While their ignorance of humanity made it all very easy, they still are. It is truly sad that the original version of the ancient wisdom, especially of religion and spiritualism, may not be present today, as human instincts are designed such a way that in long use, any wisdom is degenerated. But, if we read the ancient wisdoms with a scientifically objective mind, compassionately making allowances to subjectivity of artistic expressions and time tampering, we can easily see that core ideas of all wisdom, subjective or objective, has a common ground. What today we see as various forms of religion and philosophy very much looks like the culturally run-down versions of the original. In addition, we have to admit that the basis of ancient wisdom was empirical observations only, and then, the knowledge base of objective, measurable and proven parameters were not available. That is why, there had to be some subjective leeway in conclusions drawn. The pop mystic, the new spiritual, you should discount this when accepting the ancient wisdom through whatever resource is available now. Still, religion as well as philosophies observed common factors like, there is one life as despite forms being different, the soul in all creatures is one. In the eyes of God, everyone is equal, be it a human or an insect. Life, soul, cannot be created nor can it die, it just changes forms, soul taking up new bodies like wearing a new cloth. The ultimate value and goodness of humanity is love, compassion and universality for all creatures, as this is the basis of collective excellence, etc. All these facts are what science also accepts, though the difference is in the interpretation of what is God and soul and their functional relationship with universe. What religion and philosophies talk of higher value for humanity, science accepts as instinctive intelligence. Religion and philosophies speak of man's goodness in being in complete and objective control of its senses and instincts to be in the light of God. Science also speaks of the same control requirement to understand the instincts and be the master of its intuitive urges. The ancient metaphor of human life as a chariot with 6 horses and consciousness being the driver of the chariot is common sense for religion, philosophy as well as science. All wisdom accepts that humanity is better off only when individual curbs its instincts, instant self-gratification, in favor of society and society in favor of nation and nations in favor of world. Wisdom in all its forms speaks of importance of collective over individual self-gratification instincts. The contemporary culture of liberalism and market economy makes individual and its instinctive instant self-gratification bizarre and as the center of all values. This is against the core values of science as well as religion and philosophy. The huge benefit now humanity has that all wisdom, value systems, cultural requirements and collective mechanisms can be tested on the singular basis of the proven, measurable and objective facts of science, which is essentially what core religion and philosophy say. We have now begun to know our body and brain well, even though there is an unending knowledge. In modern contemporary world, it would be even better if one uses the energy of skepticism and doubts all. Nevertheless, one must not reject anything outrightly or show them a closed door. Doubt them, recheck them, correct them if you find them wrong, but not reject them. It is a humble suggestion that mind's value summation shall definitely be more inclined towards this desirable singularity, if old wisdoms of religion and philosophy as well as the new wisdom of science are accepted in a holistic, assimilative and integrative perspective. We shall then find, every wisdom in its core has similar ideas to offer. There is actually no contradiction and conflicts between wisdoms. The dominant theme of our universe is accord, not discord. At the core of every idea of discord is the matter of accord. Conflict is just a peripheral notion. The centripetal force of self-analysis always takes you to the core of cooperation and coexistence. In the post-World War era, researches and surveys admit that the world has become a better place to live and humanity overall have evolved to better and higher cultural traits. We have now entered an era of consciousness where our collective and integrated wisdom, led by modern and scientific knowledge but assimilating the old wisdoms, is making us move towards excellence and larger wellness. This is the new spiritualism. It never rejects, but assimilates. This new spiritualism is a beautiful mix of ancient and modern wisdoms. This new spiritualism breathes in new thinking. This new mindset, this new culture of an integrative and assimilative consciousness of modern humanity. This new spiritualism, which objectively accepts all lofty ideals of ancient wisdom but approaches them with a scientific consciousness, can lead to a new world order where we all accept larger goodness of humanity with a far more open and non-dualistic mind. Every individual can contribute to hasten up the process of engendering of this new world order. We the pop mystic. The popular perception is that a mystic is a special person, and this specialty is reserved for a few who opt for renunciation of life and its pleasures, living in secluded places, off-limit from human settlements. Once again, this very notion has major overtones of popular perception of religion. Naturally, some ritualistic utility also creeps in into this popular imaging of a mystic. It is like, if one is a scientist, the popular image that comes to mind is of a person with unkempt hair, specs and weird beard, etc. Modern psychologists and consciousness researchers believe this specialty is not meant for few, and all these populist notions are inappropriate. The new thinking is, everyone needs to be a mystic, should ideally remain in mainstream society and look like an average person in external appearances. In other words, mainstream society needs most people in a state which is befitting for a real pop mystic. This belief emanates out of the idea of mysticism as a state of mind consciousness, an internal thought utility, and not as an external action-behavior choice. The notion of mysticism and its inherent traits need to be understood from modern and contemporary perspective of holism, assimilation and integration. A mystic is not to be associated with action-behavior of renunciation. Rather, it is a mind consciousness, which always accepts and is in absolute reception of everything. Even from core religious perspective, nowhere humanity has been prescribed renunciation. The prescription always is acceptance first, assimilation next, and ultimately the balance and poise of all elements inside and outside. Modern experts identify the basic characteristic of mystical experience as the intuitive perception in we all that we are part of a universe that is a unified whole. A true mystic is a person who with thought and action seeks to obtain unity, assimilation and integration of his or her conscious self into the holism of the cosmos and everything around. He or she believes in the deep conscious assessment and exploration of all realisms that are within as well as beyond the prevailing or popular intellect and societal wisdom. In Hindu religious tradition, a mystic is termed as Adhyatmik and Rajasyawadi, a person who is given to Atma and Vishan. This translates as a person whose life energies are directed within, for self-explorations to find answers of all questions and mysteries of life and living within his or her higher consciousness. This he or she does by accepting everything and assimilating everything within his or her larger consciousness, and then engender a unity and poise between all elements, within and outside. This entire mechanism and process of spiritualism is at a profound level of mental or emotional communion. Spiritualism is a process of assimilation of multidimensional body-mind realisms into one singular oneness, through self-explorations. This idea is central to the thought of we all. This mechanism and process is common to we all, and this is what we all go through in our lives. That is why, the cherished and high utility position of life and living is this consciousness of a mystic, the spiritual we. We all have this body-mind mechanism to be spiritual. We all have this innate need to see and find ourselves in unity of the universe. Everything tangible and intangible is derived from what psychologists call as archetypal images framed in our minds since childhood and even before. This innate need emanates out of our mechanism. Experts say, what we call as self, is a bridge between body and mind, the real me and virtual me. As this bridge connects the two extreme ends, one tangible and another intangible, the sense of self itself behaves like intangible super-self, which engenders a feeling of spirit, soul and energy like sensory perceptions. That is why, we all feel the need for a unity and poise between the two conflicting entities of tangibility and intangibility. The mystic positioning is a must for we all to attain this poise. We all need to be a pop mystic in contemporary world. Experts say, Anyone can have a sensate mystical experience. Feeling in unity with surroundings is natural. Such an experience is usually accompanied by feelings of reverence and awe, as we all have archetypal imagery of such feelings, since the day we are born. Because such experiences have essentially been connected to religion since long, and scientists say, these experiences are now wired in our body-mind mechanism. Such an intuitive experience, which is available for all, is called mystical because it is mystically intangible and considered beyond the scope of this world. This, however, vitiates the beautiful and very socially meaningful notion of mysticism, as it lands this innate feeling in the domain of religion, whereas it is something very temporal and secular. The moment religion and sacrosanct rituals enter the domain of secular mysticism, which is an intuitive facility available for all, irrespective of faith spectrum, the real joy and utility of mysticism for society fades away. It then is exposed to subjective coloring of respective pre-notions of faith, and also becomes available for societal manipulation of common, innocent and unpretentious persons by a handful of ingenious lots. This manipulation is a pattern now and seen all around us. Mysticism is highly and exclusively personalized experience and can never be delegated to anyone, irrespective of tall claims of magic and charisma associated with religious mystics, gurus, shaman and godmen. Mysticism in its purest and personalized form needs to be understood. All wisdoms say, human is designed to live in state of flux, a state of instinctive semi-consciousness, floating between unconscious and subconscious mind domains. Science calls it an instinctive auto-mode functionality of consciousness. To jolt oneself out of this, one must revert within the self and initiate the self-exploration process, something humanity has done since 4 million years. This is the doorway to common sense. Often, in our daily lives, we are in drifting reactive mode of consciousness. This is our mechanism, we have been designed this way for survival. This mode is for quick-fire response of the stimulus in the ambient environment for survival success. Tougher life shall be, more reactive we become. This is one trap situation, which we need to understand. In the short time available for reactive mode mechanism of auto-mode decision-making, we cannot ideally look at the picture and situation in entirety. This short time frame can facilitate only peripheral view of a situation. Discord and conflict is always in periphery. For holistic, assimilative and integrative perspective of any problem, we need leisure and calm mind to switch over to the receptive mode, where problems or situations can be reviewed in basics and to the core. Here unity and coexistence is the rule. We have the mechanism, which makes us aware of our subjectivity, the me factor. We are endowed with the power of imagination. This is very subjective. We can hold back a reaction, we can ride over our instinctive response, wait and assign it to our brilliant facility of leisurely reflections. It is this receptive mode consciousness, which makes us the champions of the universe, the master craftspersons, designed and evolved to solve even the most complex problems. This mode makes someone see a falling apple and engender intangible laws of physics. There is a generic subject, which scientists term as the auto-function mechanism of our body-mind synchrony. Then, there is a specific subject. This is our reception mode consciousness. In our normal daily life, it is this generic subject within us, which is doing everything, as it is the auto-reactive mechanism. It is in times of distress, confusion, extraordinary situations or crisis that the specific subject, which is an entity of non-reactive, receptive mind consciousness, comes to fore and takes good control of life. The trouble most of us have is this: we have blurred the fine line of distinction between the two modes. Even when we are supposed to be in receptive mode, we are ideating in actionable patterns. We all live in such a contemporary societal space where every reception is culturally required to be converted into action mode. It is like, when someone is kissing his beloved, he is more focused on whether he is performing it well or not, instead of being in absolute reception of the joy and contentment of the beautiful touches. For him, the joy becomes an externalized exercise, rather than an internalized emotion. That is why spiritualism is everyone's need. We need to accept spiritualism in this secular and personalized perspective. Spiritualism is our natural and innate mechanism. It is not some external or societal choice that we can make or reject. As it is our mechanism to be in reactive mode auto-function consciousness, it is equally our innate mechanism to be in receptive mode mechanism of our higher consciousness. Spiritualism is just this innate and built-in mechanism and process to create a beautiful and fruitful poise between different layers and dimensions of our consciousness, is to have a successful and meaningful life with optimum potentials. Moreover, most people accept spiritualism as synonymous with renunciation. They also perceive renunciation as denying everything and every pleasure of life. This idea is sad vestiges of misinterpreted and misunderstood religions, and a detrimental one. Renunciation is not denial. The best traditions and precepts of all religions also tell us. Renunciation is an acceptance of everything and then awareness that there has to be a poise and equilibrium in all pursuits. Renunciation is not leaving, but arriving at poise, which helps in mystical experiences. It is good for all. There is an old Oriental wisdom, which says, a person shall die if he or she has only one element, either all good or all bad. Survival is a function of poised positioning between the two elements of good and bad. Renunciation is a facility and mechanism for arriving at this poise. The process is of first accepting everything, good or bad. Then assimilating them all to process its wider utility, and then finally, prune those elements which are not suitable for poise. Pruning is not renunciation. One does not have to shave his or her head. The idea is not to have such long hairs, which could require loads of time and attention for care. Better it is to trim it to a state which is manageable and still gives a radiant glow to the beautiful face. Ordinarily, we tend to categorize renunciation as virtuous, attributing various moral or holy qualities to it. Renunciation, as a consciousness positioning, not as an action-behavior choice, for search of poise, is essentially a practical and secular issue, not a moral issue. Your state of consciousness fits your intention, and renunciation changes intention. There is another important aspect about mysticism, which needs to be understood and accepted. Mysticism is not an end in itself. It is just a stage, which works as a launching pad for higher purposes. Experts conceptualize the mystical experience as one, which can occur as a transitional state of consciousness, in the process of the development of higher states of consciousness. For them the core state of consciousness is pure consciousness, and from it develops these higher states of consciousness. Spiritualism is a process and facility to arrive at higher consciousness, which is where we all have to arrive. Experts believe pure consciousness as the basic state from which the mystical experience is derived. Pure consciousness is healthy, life-enhancing, and promotes development, and although its access is facilitated by the practice of being in the receptive mode of consciousness, as against the usual reactive mode, it is naturally experienced by all each day as states of consciousness are changed. Therefore, essentially, everyone needs to be a mystic to arrive at a pure consciousness state, and as we arrive at this stage, some mystical experiences shall happen, as it is just a transitional state. The final destination is to use this platform of pure consciousness as launch vehicle to attain higher consciousness. That is why, in modern contemporary times of growing conflict, chaos and conundrum, we all need to be a pop mystic. Seen in this light, experts say, mystical experiences are just symptoms and syndromes, which occur as we land in a state, which is achieved through de-automization of our instinctive action mode body-mind synchronization. It is like a set of experiences, which result because of this synchronization getting a new connect and consciousness, the receptive mode consciousness. This mystical energy is not an end, it is rather a medium to move ahead and reach the final state of higher consciousness. Religion says the same. As we said earlier, questions, which we popularly associate with spiritualism too, has to be tested in the light of modern contemporary wisdom. It then would seem that the questions are essentially very temporal and secular, and it is the contemporary holistic, assimilative and integrative knowledge of humanity, which should be assigned the question for answers, not spiritualism or any faith mechanism. For example, when we now ask ourselves, "Who am I?" we cannot be sure the answerer is speaking from his or her nature or nurture. Firstly, we even cannot be sure the questioner is asking from his or her instinctive mind or cultured mind. In such a situation, when even question is uncertain in its origin, all answers become true, but no answer is objective and singularly acceptable. The paradox of questions and answers is, every moment, everywhere, everything seems to herald the supremacy of me and self. Everyone says he or she knows himself or herself and his or her priorities. Still, in reality, nobody seems to know exactly who and what truly is this me and self. In such a scenario, the entire spiritualism lands in the realm of confusion and conflict. The design of God and his expectation for and from humanity itself becomes a huge conundrum. Traditionally, religion, spiritualism and philosophy work on the premise of the self being an objective realism, with born capability of a general will and in instinctive possession of universal goodness. However, this hypothesis seems the primary source of confusion and conflict. Krishna, the incarnation of Vishnu in Hindu religious traditions, says in Gita, "The ultimate karma for a human is to become Naispri." The meaning of this word Naispri in contemporary world is almost impossible, as it has huge metaphoric values. In Gita, there is a powerful metaphor of a karma. There is a suggestion of a consciousness, which is unattached with instinctive self. That is why, even when someone does an act or behavior, the energy of it should never come from its purpose and end result. Instinctive reaction is considered to be energized by the purpose and fruition of end results. Naispri consciousness keeps it unattached to the fruition energy, qualifying an action as a karma. This is hugely confusing, tough to understand. The suggestion is, everything needs to be done but nothing needs to be done for doing it. Everything needs to be done, which is positioned there to be done, yet, in doing it, there must never be the notion of me or self involved with it. Even when we look like involved in doing everything, there must never be the feeling and attachment of me or self in it. This is mega confusing. The prescription is, the beingness, the instinctive me, the intuitive self. Everything shall be there when something is being done, yet, there must never be an attachment with it. This is a big challenge, to keep one's being unattached with the instinct. The trouble is, to do so, one has to be completely sure what this instinct is. What part of it is the share of nurture and what part is purely nature. This gut feeling or soul voice must first be purged of adulteration of socialization and cultural benchmarks, then only one can be sure of the authenticity of it. The big question is it possible to purge the soul voice of such adulterations? Is it possible to segregate the nature-nurture divide? Is the amount of objectivity, which is required for such action, possible? Is it possible? This big question precedes all questions of spiritualism. The biggest wonder of this mortal world seems to be, the truth is neither finite nor established and static. Still, every human believes, what he or she understands is the truth, and what he or she chooses is the finite static established positioning of truth. In addition, there is this infinite and acute desire, urgent endeavor that, to make this truth prevail and perpetuate on everyone and everywhere, is his or her primary duty. Why and how? The larger point, which needs to be understood is, if Naispri means being unattached, then this unattachment should be not only from the instinctive me and its actions but from the truths of the subjective soul voices too. How can one be Naispri if this unattachment is partial and incomplete? It is a huge challenge to rise up to this level of objectivity. Science says, objectivity is not possible for humans. In fact, it is not possible even for machines. No machine can work on 100% efficiency. In fact, religion too says it is impossible for humans to attain 100% objectivity. Most human minds have been trained to accept that only one thing has been stationed in the cosmos as completely objective. That is God. That is why every human has this ultimate benchmark of attaining godliness. Like, it is every machine's pursuit to attain 100% efficiency. However, this does not seem possible ever. If divinity is attainable, then it cannot be the final destination. If godliness is attainable, then where is the utility of the benchmark of divinity? Godliness is something which is beyond the limits of attainment of humanity, yet for everyone to chase. In religion, objectivity has such a difficult positioning that it is even beyond perception of average humans, let alone it being achievable. Gita elaborates the desirability of karma in the following way: life is ephemeral but not unreal, one needs to be unattached but not detached, being nice looks like being recluse but it is not the same, doing without sense of doing is true action, the action and behavior, which is purged of instinctiveness are true action and behavior, all actions should be like offerings in a yagna, holy fire, only that action and behavior, which stands at the assimilative point of tangible and intangible is pure, etc. All this looks like a complex portrayal of confusion and conflict. It has been hinted in Gita, to be human is to stand at either end of the two extremes of this conflict, dualism. It is only the God, who stands in the middle of the two extremes and still, ubiquitous in both the extreme ends non-dualism. This is some exclusive positioning, which is reserved only for God, unavailable and untenable for humans. Science attempts to present an easy and understandable definition of this cosmic conundrum and conflict. It says, objectivity is not possible for humanity as the very presence of body melts the objectivity. The objective realism truth changes the very moment it is observed. It is only natural that there shall be difference in observer-dependent and observer-independent realisms. This is the stated position of quantum physics. An average human does not need to delve deep into these issues. Just be innocently humble to accept the undermentioned four pillars as essential for the beautiful palace of workable objectivity. The conscious positioning for the pop mystic has to be simple and easily available. Being nice as enunciated by religion is a long tough process. However, be it religion, philosophy, psychology or science, all wisdoms say one thing about the ideal life positioning of a person with a higher consciousness. This notion of nice person and personality is the benchmark that one needs to attain to become a true spiritualist. However, all wisdoms provide a simpler and easily workable model, which is also what a pop mystic need to accept and practice. For a pop mystic, or a contemporary modern spiritual, to ensure that his or her life becomes a long unending process of joy journey towards attaining nice benchmark, one just needs to ensure. First, he or she would never discriminate against anyone. Affection and equitable affability for all is what every religion also prescribes. Second, he or she shall make tolerance towards all as his or her primary virtue and never ever allow aggression towards anyone. Thirdly, he or she shall keep away from greed and self-gratification instincts. 4. Lifelong, he or she shall make such endeavors that would keep him or her on the unending journey to mitigate ignorance. That is why, Gita says, all actions must be like offerings at a prayer, which ensures that all actions must be aimed at collective wellness and never towards singular self-gratification. Never ever be narcissistic about what you know. Knowledge is an infinite journey. Journeying is joy, not arriving. The moment you feel you have arrived, narcissism kills your wisdom. A truly scientific value system. It needs to be emphasized that what old wisdom prescribed for a spiritual person and what also science accepts in its behavioral aspects, may look like some sort of an archetypal and outdated morality. However, it has to be accepted that all wisdoms, in their core ideologies are same, and their prescription has always had values and utility, which shall remain transcendental. The reason for this is, they look like moralistic because they have been set in a prescriptive format. However, they are based on scientifically proven utility for all of us. We shall talk in detail about their scientific utility to bring home the idea that a pop mystic must have them, as all these ideas have larger modernist utility and contemporary common sense fruition. Human mind is where all mysticisms emanate and end. The multi-layered mechanisms of mind is one huge mystery humanity has been attempting to unravel since thousands of years. The spiritualism philosophy have given its own interpretation. Science has taken over and presented great facts about mind mechanism, its structure and functions, and this has led humanity to understand many things about consciousness. Human brain is the central mechanism for ensuring the survival and excellence of human body, and it has to be accepted that the conscious and subconscious mind accepts and expresses almost everything in terms of its primary and pivotal role of ensuring a mechanism for survival and excellence. This interpretation of human mind looks so demeaning, as we all are inclined to accept ourselves as something big and a lofty and special creation of God. Accepting ourselves as an entity, with base idea of survival, is revolting. That is why, science says, the idea of a self, in objecting terms, is often pitted against the self itself, which we have been used to accepting subjectively since thousands of years. The mechanism, as we are, may not be easy for us to accept, but it is very helpful in enhancing our joy and satisfaction. Just for knowing the mechanism, we need to accept that human mind ensures this survival and excellence through a continuous and complicated maintenance of a process called homeostasis, better understandable as poise. All wisdoms, old or new, since thousands of years, have talked about the importance of this core idea called poise, explained in terms of philosophy and spiritualism. Science unravels it in terms of physiological, biochemical and psychosomatic homeostasis. We need to understand this larger poise and its utility. In lower organisms, the homeostasis or poise is only physiological and biological, but as human mechanism is very complex, human mind has to perform a complex and multidimensional homeostasis. In humans, the poise also has to be biosociological, psychological, emotional, spiritual as well as volitional. We are talking about this all because wellness and excellence has to specifically do with this homeostasis, and spiritualism is one potent and innate mechanism to ensure overall homeostasis, the wellness poise. There are sufficient scientific researches to establish that when people are in true love and absolute intimacy, they practice the above-mentioned traits and values of non-discrimination, tolerance and non-aggression, non-self-indulgence and accommodation towards others' ideas, behavior and actions. As people do it and make it their first skin, their overall homeostasis is in great shape, and this reflects in their healthy state of mind and body as well as behavior action. This has a cyclic impact. Love and absolute intimacy enhances homeostasis or body-mind poise, which in turn enhances the life and sanity of love and intimacy. The reverse has also been established, as researches show. When people are in unstable and unsettled love and intimacy elements, their body-mind gets affected and they land in serious body-mind dysfunction and even death. True spiritualist is a person who remains in the perpetuity of the utility of love and absolute intimacy with everyone and everything around. This positioning is ideal for the pop mystic. It has to be clearly understood that being in true love and absolute intimacy is not an external body-mind trait of behavior action needs. Rather, love and intimacy is such a beautifully precious personalized positioning of subjective consciousness. We all must find and remain perpetually in the consciousness of absolute love, intimacy and compassion. This pure and precious energy of love has loads of personal and subjective utility. It has immense utility and fruition for almost all, but in individual capacity. Love always has much larger utility and fruition for yourself and your own wellness, than it is in the domain of societal exchanges. Homeostasis, the person's overall poise, is also a subjective and personal positioning of consciousness. It has huge personal utility. Researchers have confirmed that a person with greater conflicts, stress, chaos and confusion with people and ideas in his or her life shall be in poor biosociological, psychological, emotional and volitional homeostasis. This disturbed and unsettled homeostasis leads him or her to dysfunctional health and even death. A true spiritualist, who practices all the above said values of life, shall be no better poised as his personality and consciousness shall accept little stress and conflict. Let us understand this all by an example. A young father has his little daughter growing fast in a very big city of United States of America, where pop culture has taken the teenagers in perfect grip. The mother is very concerned and even tense. She worries for her teenage daughter and is in deep stress and conflict as what to do. She asks her husband, what to do to avoid any accidents. Nothing new, most parents do the same. However, what the father of this teenage girl said to his wife is interesting. He said, I am trying to figure out what my daughter can do, which I cannot forgive. I love her and I think the sky of my affection and compassion for her shall always remain much larger than her arms can stretch for possible wrongs. True love has to be like that. A true spiritualist has to be like that. Love and spiritualism, in all its manifestations and expressions, has to be like that. It is the internal poise, which finds external expressions in such beautifully poised and peaceful ways. Love and spiritualism liberates, never suffocates as both of all good ideals in their armory. The compassion of forgiveness shall always remain larger than the accidents of passion, when you are in true love and absolute intimacy, the core benchmark of a true spiritualist. This position is ideal for the pop mystic. The father, in the above story, is in perfect poise of his wellness homeostasis. His wellness is not threatened by his subjective self-image of right and wrong. It is his poise, which is so beautifully and magnanimously reflected in his behavior and action. It is only natural that this father is a pop mystic, a hero for the teenage girl, and this girl shall grow to be one poised person, another pop mystic for sure. In Hindu religious traditions, it has been said that the body is the perfect media. All attainments of life and life beyond, material or spiritual, has to be through this media of body-mind mechanism. Even moksha and nirvana is attainable only through this media. That is why Hindu traditions emphasize on the first duty, mool karma, towards preservation and perpetuation of the sanity and purity of the media, the body-mind mechanism. The core religious idea is to have a poised media, and this is ensured when we have a poise of all elements of the body-mind realisms. Science calls this poise as homeostasis. Spiritualism is a mechanism and process through which we all attain this poise and ensure the preservation and perpetuation of the purity and sanity of the media of body-mind mechanism. That is why a spiritualist shall work towards it. From the day we are born, we are muffled by love, in one form or other. Our preparedness starts from that day. Initially, it is the responsibility of parents and family, but later, we ourselves have to learn and unlearn our ways towards this poise of our larger wellness homeostasis. Love and absolute intimacy, as an idea, deeply associated with the entity of homeostasis, is hugely beautiful and highly useful tool for a true spiritualist. Love is a mystical expression of the sense of larger wellness, which is a cardinal and potent condition for homeostasis. What mind receives and expresses are through neurochemical and neuroelectrical processes. However, these processes are intangible and our conscious mind never is able to see or perceive them. It is when these processes are translated in behavior and action then we understand and accept it. The factors which affect the homeostasis are intangible effectors of human emotions. The above-mentioned values work as magic for the homeostasis process as it shields us from negative and conflicting effects. The questions of spiritualism. There are questions of life and living. Everyone has them. They have been there since thousands of years. Since the time these questions came into existence, the answers also started to take shape. The old wisdom attempted answers to these questions, and many of us have good faith that the answers provided by old wisdoms of religion, philosophy and spiritualism are right and probably the only answers. However, for many, they are not satisfactory answers, and the questions remain valid and in search of right answers. The core questions are: why humanity everywhere is suffering and in conflict and confusion? Why is there so much fear and despair? What is the singular road to internal and external peace and harmony? What happens after death? Is rebirth true? What is the meaning and purpose of life? Did God create us, and for what? What is the mechanism of God? What is the idealism of life? What is true wisdom and why it eludes humanity? The new spiritual you has a tough task in hand. You want new answers, and in fact, it is only natural, as we all are living in a new world, where realisms have a different perspective, in sync with modern scientific logic. The old wisdom, somehow, does not seem to be galvanized to update their answers in the light of the new awareness and knowledge of humanity. However, the new spiritualist in us has to do more than just seeking answers. We all have to revisit and reassess the questions first. The new spiritualist works on the premise of objective and measurable logic, a common sense, which has to be in perfect symmetry with modern knowledge of humanity. That is why, even the age-old questions need to be revisited, reframed and even reassigned and realigned in a secular and temporal perspective. First thing first, the new spiritualist has to be sure as what he or she accepts as the definition, nature and scope of spiritualism in modern contemporary worldview. Once we assign and align the modernist and contemporary structures and functions of the modern spiritualism, which the pop mystic shall accept as core creed of spiritualism, we have better and rationally objective understanding of the genesis of questions and the DNA of the answers. Spiritualism in modern contemporary context needs to be understood by some contemporary example, and for that let us use the metaphor of a computer. We all operate the computer, even kids do it smartly, some even better than adults. However, only a minuscule percentage of us know exactly how the computer is made and what scientific mechanisms and processes make it work. Most of us are operative geniuses of computer, successfully doing all functions that a computer is designed for. However, when someone asks us about how the computer does this function or then one, we are in trouble answering. Suppose a kid asks his mother as how to save a file on the computer. The happy mum shall tell the kid, "Oh, so simple, press the Ctrl and S keys of the keyboard and it is done." The kid is not satisfied. Inquisitive best as they are, the kid asks further, "Tell me why pressing these keys saves this file," and we are in trouble. Happy we all are to see images on the screen of the computer. However, if we are asked how these pictures from a camera got into the screen of the computer, we have trouble. The reason is, we do not know the scientific or technological details of the working mechanisms and processes of the computer. We actually do not have the need, as we all have mastered the operative functions and it is enough to make full potential use of the computer. Kids run the Android operative system on hand devices and nobody has to bother about the technological details of the jelly beans and gingerbreads. The trouble starts when questions are generated for answers, which pertain to finer details of the working system of a realism, the operative masters of which we happily are. So, when a kid shall ask, how the pictures sneak into the screens of your computer, we shall devise smart answers, but they shall never be true answers, as we do not know the system functioning. Someone shall answer, there are internal wires and pictures sneak through them. Someone shall answer, the computer has a hidden eye, which can see things and then reproduce. Still, another shall say, ask your mother, she has this irritating habit of sneaking things into places all over. Someone may say, you shall know, When you grow up, not now. Spiritualism is not only the operative knowledge of the system called life and living, it is much beyond that. We have a mechanism, the life around us has a mechanism, the cosmic order has a mechanism process. Usually, we do not have the express need to be in complete knowledge of the entire mechanism of the computer of life and living. Most of us do quite well without it. However, it has to be accepted with humility and innocence that questions shall always emanate, wherever there is an intricate and multidimensional mechanism and process. Questions are embedded in the mechanism. We may do without it and still do reasonably well is another thing. Still, questions cannot be wished away. The humble assertion is, we all are designed to have excellence, not just bare survival. Excellence is systemic in the mechanism and process of all designs. This excellence is a must for optimizing operative efficiency. Spiritualism is an intangible, innate, instinctive, embedded and essential consciousness of overall excellence of life and living. Spiritualism is your mind positioning for this avowed excellence of life and living. We all can operate a computer, but those with overall knowledge of the technological mechanism and process of the digital computing and artificial intelligence shall have the overall excellence in using the computer to its best possible potential. Naturally, as the computer is designed for enhancing and catalyzing the excellence of the operator, those in complete knowledge of the design and its mechanism process shall be no better positioned to land at the potential excellence. Moreover, one does not have to be a computer engineer to understand the mechanism process of the design of a computer. We just have to expand the limits of our natural inquisitiveness to get to the core principle of digital computing and artificial intelligence. All sciences and technology, in fact all wisdoms and knowledge, have a simple model to get to its core system. Religion provided its own model, using simple metaphors from nature around us. Science does it by using analogies with other simpler models. The same complex scientific theory is taught in Class 6, which scientists learn for a lifetime, in their labs. We all have the mind mechanism to understand everything in simpler and less complex models. Spiritualism is also about assimilating a simpler and easily amenable model of the complex cosmic system and life and living mechanisms. Our own body-mind homeostasis is one simple model to understand the colossal and complex mechanism of cosmic poise. It also needs to be talked here that spiritualism has no answers of its own. A computer engineer shall never give you an answer of his or her own. Being an engineer, being a spiritualist, does not qualify us to create answers. It only enables us to develop and assimilate a simpler and understandable model of an answer already embedded in a system. How a computer works has a singular and objectively replicable answer. The answers cannot change for you or me even when you and me become a computer engineer. It just extends us an endowment, an ability to understand the already present answers. The cosmic realism, the life and living mechanism and processes already have answers. The answers are as real, ingrained, systemic, objective and replicable as are the questions. The realism mechanism itself engenders all questions and all answers. Humanity has just been able to create a knowledge and wisdom, which helps us unravel and understand the questions and their answers already there. Spiritualism has no answers of questions of life, living and cosmic realism. This is simply because it has no questions of its own. Both questions and answers pertain to realisms, which have been there billions of years before spiritualism or humanity came into being. Spiritualism, however, remains and shall always be the facility and wisdom to unravel and assimilate the answers as well as the questions in personalized models, a subjective metaphor of an objective realism, which were, are and shall always be. Now, the big issue at hand for the new spiritual you is what is the nature, scope and structure of this spiritualism, which a modern contemporary person can have to optimize his potentials as a human and also be able to unravel the already available key answers of life and living questions. We talk about all this now. The computer analogy we used for understanding spiritualism has its own limitations. Cosmic system, in its vastness and multidimensionality of life and living, cannot be akin to a simple computer. The trouble starts from here. The cosmic system and the life-living realisms are billions of years old, and even scientists believe they are so vast and intricate that human mind is insufficient to understand them fully ever. Moreover, there is one fact that has to be taken in mind. It is eccentrically fascinating, extremely bizarre, stupidly enjoyable, yet probably the most critical and grim fact of humanity and its living experiences on this planet. We all are into something which has no parallel in the history of living being, probably anywhere in the universe. We had questions which originated few thousands of years back for we humans, but the questions actually had their origins billions of years back. From about 10,000 years, we humans started attempting their answers. Answers first came with religion, then with philosophy, and finally, early science stepped in. Now, the modern humans have the wherewithal of modern science and technology to understand all transcendental questions in a new light and present novel set of answers. Still, the troubles are the same. Even thousands years back, the data which were available for testing the validity of facts and separate fiction from objective fact were very negligible, as all facts were billions or millions of years old, randomly and erratically available. It is a strange situation. Incidents happened billions and millions of years back, but the consciousness and wisdom of humanity to be able to fathom all these happened merely a few thousands of years back. The universe came into being 14 billion years back, and humans happened 4 million years back. There is a popular belief that the evolutionary model of life and living, which science presents as alternative to God's design, has so many missing links. The popular Big Bang theory of creation of universe and the contemporary quantum mechanism are considered to have so much elements of philosophical imagery and postulations that it is even tough for scientists to present a simpler and amenable model for understanding of an average person. Many believe such science is a very complex fictionalism of factual realisms. The debate is never ending. A simpler interpretation is, as humans developed the subjective consciousness, the feeling of me and self, something unique and exclusively available to human species only, humans could formulate questions which had their origin way back in time. Modern humans today can hardly visualize the distant past even in its best of consciousness, as the links, the requisite factual data to all these incidents are missing and can never ever be recreated and re-imaged to perfection either in human mind or in a human-created lab. It is a sad thing to say, but the fact looks like the very distant past is beyond replication in its finest details. It only seems natural that despite best of scientific advances today and more finesse coming in coming decades, humanity probably cannot find the actual, objective, singular and the right answers. We do not have the requisite data now and may not ever have, even if we have the consciousness and logistics. Then, the billion-dollar question is, are the answers to all these questions really important and necessary for successful life and living of humanity in coming centuries? Do we really need these answers for creating a world where all humans have a peaceful, prosperous and enjoyable life, and which next generations could inherit from us? No doubt, if we have a singular answer for all these questions of humanity, we naturally shall be better off. But, as it is apparent that this is just an idealism which shall always remain confined to the realm of should and prescriptions, we all need to move ahead for something practically possible which could be actually achieved, despite the above limitations of human consciousness and mind. The idea is, it shall take another hundreds of years before science could evolve itself to such a capability where it creates a singular, objective and integrative platform for assimilation of all human wisdom so far to explain all realism, be it physical, cognitive consciousness or precognitive and non-physical consciousness. On the other hand, it may never happen. The later has larger probability. So, Can it happen that humanity drops these contentious and conflicting issues for a while and concentrate on building an integrative, holistic and globally workable and acceptable paradigm, which could be the singular basis of developing a worldview that works commonly for all humans? Accepted, any procrastination is not a welcome thing to do. Especially, when the issue at hand is of such paramount importance to larger humanity. Still, procrastination is better than confused and chaotic continuity. A simple and innocent query is, can we drop the larger questions of life and living for a while to focus on so-called smaller questions of humanity? The smaller yet very crucial issues at hand are world peace, sustainable development, an alternative global economy based on larger wellness of humanity rather than pure profit, a compassionate framework for family and social living based on collective wellness rather than individualistic instant self-gratification, etc. As it seems, humanity has been very well ensconced and in perpetual pursuit of the larger questions, and it is actually the smaller questions mentioned above that are being procrastinated for ages. If compared, we can see that humanity has made larger advancement in understanding and even answering the larger questions but has made very little headway in settling the smaller questions. Many of these issues have rather regressed in the march of civilization, and we all are easy victims of this procrastination and regression. Well, it looks like another presupposition for shoulds and idealistic prescriptions, but then, is there a better option? It is as open to unending debate as anything is. People may say that crucial and cardinal questions, such as what is consciousness, what is actual realism, what is life and how things came to be, etc. must first be truly answered. Only then there could be a basis for a singular paradigm, for a singular worldview, which then could be true basis for building a new and lasting worldview for a rational and lasting world order. The only rejoinder to these debates is an idea that cardinal questions may never be resolved as the requisite empirical data for this is not available, and may never be as they are somewhere billions and millions of years away with so many missing links. Even if they get resolved in next few hundred years from now, it would take another thousands of years for all humanity to accept them. This is too long a period for all smaller questions of humanity to wait. It seems only practical that as humanity grapples with larger questions, in the meantime, let us take all smaller questions in all sincerity and urgency, as humanity is in such a stage where these questions have put a question mark on the very survival of human species on the earth. No doubt, we all need our answers right and first, but we all actually first need to survive and be rationally empowered to reach up to such a stage in human evolution where we actually remain there to enjoy the answers. The way our smaller questions have made this world a virtual calamity, it seems improbable that humanity can survive such long till the answers are found, and even if it survives that long, will the humanity be in such state of consciousness to even accept and appreciate that? One may say, it is a Hobson's choice. Finding answers for smaller questions of humanity are far more challenging and impossible than answering the larger question, and no amount of answer of larger question can settle the smaller ones. Then, what we should do? A section of objective people say, humans do not become what they think they should or they would, but they become what the randomized and probabilistic energy of stupid engineering of evolution thinks humanity should and would. However, some great minds of contemporary wisdom appeal, let this evolution cease to be as randomized and probabilistic as it had been thus far, let conscious and rational humanity be the new and controlled energy of a new evolution which is well directed and well planned. Is that another presupposition for shoulds and idealistic prescriptions? You decide. The new spiritualist in you has to decide. The pop mystic should sit and think what is his or her agenda for spiritualism, chasing answers of those questions, which may never be appropriately answered, or focus more on those smaller questions, which we not only understand well, but also have answers, which can be singular and highly beneficial for all of us. Create your own model of spiritualism. The new spiritual you has absolute freedom to formulate new questions for him or her. The old popular questions shall have to be repositioned, redesigned and realigned. All questions must lead to answers, which ensures larger wellness and excellence of self, not as some individualistic, self-indulgent and self-gratifying entity, rather as an essential part of the larger global society. The collective wellness and excellence is one singular condition, which ensures wellness and excellence of all individuals. The new spiritual you understands the basic mechanism of life-living realisms. Thousands of years back, religion and philosophy also provided us models and metaphors to understand the cosmic model as well as life-living realisms. However, they regressed to doubtful utility as like all good ideals. They too became victim to human ingenuity and conveniences. Moreover, they could not update their models with changing times. Science also provides models, but ideal it is for the new spiritual you to opt a holistic, assimilative and integrative model, which accepts and combines all good and cherished ideals and models of all wisdoms, old or new. This shall be an ideal contemporary positioning for the pop mystic. This new spiritualism should work out towards larger wellness of individual, society as well as larger worldview. Moreover, it should endow us with a thought-behavior-action platform, which optimizes all processes of humanity and this world, enabling our potentials to reach a new high in peaceful coexistence. Let us translate this holistic assimilative integrative model of new spiritualism in 6 core domains of life and living: self, family, work, society, world and beyond life. Each one of us can have our own subjective and personalized model of spiritualism. However, these models must ideally conform to and be in perfect symmetry with the holistic assimilative integrative model of new spiritualism, which is in sync with contemporary common sense. When you design and evolve your own personalized and subjective spiritualism model, the core ideas of overall wellness and excellence must be retained and adhered to. The choices and priorities can be subjective and all the operative ideas, thoughts, behaviors and action can be designed suiting to personal requirements. However, the following notions must be part of any model we create. 1. The core principle must always be holism, assimilation and integration of all wisdoms and knowledge of humanity, and never ever reject anything outrightly. There is always some utility in even the seemingly worst of futility. Always remember, one does not necessarily have to be wrong for another to be right. Coexistence is always better. 2. We have a mechanism, and this body-mind mechanism must always be in perpetuity of poise and overall homeostasis. Your spiritual model must ensure biosociological, psychological, emotional, spiritual as well as volitional homeostasis. 3. The body-mind homeostasis or poise is largely a function of internal emotional stability, poise and positivity. However, internal emotions are deeply affected by elements from our external environment, especially the ambient societal milieu. To minimize external disturbances to internal emotions, one must accept love, absolute intimacy and compassion as core elements of the spiritual model. This necessitates action-behavior benchmarks of non-discrimination, tolerance and non-aggression, moderation and non-self-gratification as well as perpetuation of pursuits for knowledge and wisdom. 4. The higher consciousness is the ultimate personality positioning, and to attain that, mysticism is a transitional situation. This stage is reached with a receptive mode consciousness, breaking free from the auto mode reactive consciousness. The spiritualism model must work out for a life and living schedule, which allows quality leisure time for self and family. 5. Most importantly, if we see the larger picture and accept facts objectively, with whatever knowledge humanity has so far evolved and understood, we shall have to accept that all life on Earth, including humans and its evolution, is one huge random and multidimensional event cyclicality. On the other hand, what we humans make out of it and charter our own ways for survival, purpose and excellence is another multidimensional cyclicality. Both forces, though interdependent only at the core and having some patterns, which can be replicable, still, they remain highly and intricately randomized. The element of unpredictability, inadvertence, accidentality and asymmetricality in both largely sovereign forces of the cosmos only ensures that humanity can never ever remain in perpetuity of singular purpose, peace and order. Especially in contemporary situation, when humanity long before evolved and acquired the criticality of conscious intelligence, which is bound to lead it to ever-growing entropy, degrading randomization, and ultimate extinction in the long run. Finding a purpose and purity of singular pattern or model of culture and virtuosity for global community seems out of question. The mechanism of cosmic realism never ever seems to allow it. It is more impossible now. The wise can only understand that and find its own personalized and subjective peace. Anyone, who arrives at the higher consciousness of higher objectivity, can clearly unravel this mystery. That is why, spiritualism also needs to be very personalized and subjective. You have the genius in you and you can do it. All best. Reverting to God's original design. The great scientist and a highly evolved mind, Einstein, once said, "We shall require a substantially new manner of thinking, if mankind is to survive." This new thinking is of course at the center of all modern contemporary endeavors of humanity. We are fast becoming a very complex living being, and the environment, be it physical, economic or societal, is also becoming so complex, making it hugely tough for an average and common human being. Things have turned far more difficult from the time when Einstein said this. The basic things, which count substantially for the larger wellness of an average human being, are now the core factors responsible for people's stress, troubles and negativity. The first probably is relationship and second the workplace. People now admit, and even surveys confirm, that average human being derives majority of his or her stress, pain and negativity from relationships and from workplace. Both, once the prime source of wellness, are the core areas of stress and troubles now. As humbly and sincerely as we could possibly put it, it has to be said that both troubles emanate from the dualistic consciousness, which is a product of our insistence to refuse to see and accept the dynamics of human mechanism. It is crucial to understand the mechanism of humans to arrive at a non-dualistic consciousness, which then helps us understand in objectivity and singularity all key questions of humanity. This surely is part of the new thinking required for the wellness and survival of humans. The new thinking is sincerely attempting to put forth a novel vision and wisdom to understand how we humans have evolved, how our societies and cultures have evolved, and more importantly, how our consciousness evolves with respect to drastic changes we humans have made into our own physical and cultural environment. Once we understand and accept the dynamics of this mechanism, we can easily and rightly understand the key questions or the problems affecting modern humanity. Now, understand the mechanism. We are surely turning into a very intelligent species. This intelligence is reflected in the complexities of physical and cultural environments, which we humans have created over thousands of years. We live in very large societies, with diverse cultural and mental frameworks, with hugely corporatized and megastructural workplaces needing complex and technologically intense work specialization. Even simple living is now a complex and highly structured living experience. Never ever humanity had to face the experience of anthill living in 100-storied apartments. For a change, go to a jungle with closed views and static environment and live there for a month. You will definitely feel that your life has become a big boring thing, as you have so little to do. Everything is so simple and restrictive that your brain actually has so little to do. You wake up, eat and then sleep. Every day. The experiences are similar and there is no challenge that could make you even think. Some of you may get to like it, as it is a definitive rest to your tired and tossed up senses and mind, which is so used to handling multiplicity of tasks every day. It is a simple mechanism. Intelligence is in how much and how differentiated and complex inputs you feed to your mind for processing. Dumb is a person who may have a similar brain capacity as an intelligent one, but the difference is, the dumb does not allow so many complex and varied inputs into his mind and keeps it simple. The more inputs you allow to your mind, the more intelligent you are, and more intelligent you are, more confusion and more conflict shall be at your end. The dumb has this privilege of being less conflicted and so less troubled. The huge trouble with humanity is, he or she wants to be intelligent yet wish to be free of conflicts and confusion. This is definitely against the mechanism. Life is simplest at unicellular level. A single-cell living being has all his tasks well wired and purely instinctive. There is almost no conflict and confusion. The trouble starts when living beings develop multicellular and become intelligent. The life and living and its relationship with environment becomes complex. Humans are at the pinnacle of this intelligence, and they have to be the most conflicted, confused and chaotic lot of all living beings on Earth. Now, important it is to understand what the great Einstein wished to tell us when we talked about the new thinking for survival of humanity. Understanding this is crucial for humanity. Another great scientist has already warned us, saying, species tend to become extinct as evolution makes them intelligent enough to destroy completely the precarious poise with its environment. Humans are already on the threshold of such a level of intelligence. The need, as enunciated by great minds, is to understand a simple fact. Be it the God's design or the product of a very random process of stupid evolution, the fact remains unchanged that what and where humanity has come to be, has always had a greater element of randomized and unplanned design into it. That is why, we have a world to live, which leaves so much to be desirable and wanted. This has to change if humans have to survive and excel. The uncertain, unplanned, random, uncontrolled element in the evolution, or simply, the design, has to be either reversed or pruned. The desirability for a controlled and planned evolution is the energy behind the new thinking. For that to happen, we all need to be very clear in the mind that, what we are and what we have around us may be God's design, but what we made ourselves as and what we created out of that are certainly not God's domain. It is purely human orchestration. If we change with impeccable level of planning, all those things which we humans created, and probably against God's own design, we are certainly not anyway doing anything against God or divinity. Rather, probably, for the first time in human history, we humans are actually starting to correct ourselves and leading the humanity to something, which actually was God's original design. This is new spiritualism of objective consciousness. We humans now have this brilliant intelligence to do so. It was the randomized and unplanned intelligence, which pushed us to the brink of a chaos, as the mechanism had an inherent design for it. New spiritualism is about understanding these forces of randomization and consciously introducing element of planning in the evolution that humanity shall design in future. Now, we have the wisdom and understanding to rise above this inherent mechanism and introduce a non-dualistic consciousness to this mechanism, so that what we now create and ascribe for our growth and evolution has perfect planning and singularly measurable and provable basis to it, and which leads humanity to a certain and sure excellence. We are beyond survival issues. We now have to be in control of the mechanism as well as the randomized energy of evolution to be what essentially God's design was. The God within. Since time immemorial, inquisitive people with questions in their hearts spent huge amount of time and energy to find what is good, ideal and desirable for all humans and for all times to come. So much has been written, and more than that remains to be realized through unwritten traditions and wisdom ingrained in the original nature. Through the ages and in different stages of human knowledge and civilizations, to some great people were revealed the unknowable, which was deemed as the ultimate wisdom that cannot be known but only be realized. However, for the benefit of humanity to come, they created some Bijjan seed words, which is just a word or a set of words written in some mantra format. These are important metaphors and symbols for humanity to decipher and understand. All such seed words reveal one thing. wisdom is singular, and that is why the notion of God is also singular. One such all-encompassing and ultimate seed word in ancient Hindu spiritual tradition is Satchitanand, Sachidanand. The three parts of the seed word means Sat equals absolute existence, Chit equals absolute consciousness, Anand equals absolute bliss. The corresponding word for absolute in Sanskrit is Mool. We can say it means absolute, but as it is, the words that humanity has designed cannot fully explain the deepest of meanings. The word Mool has following wider meanings: absolute, intrinsic, innate, natural, zero, etc. The seed word reveals, Satchitanand is the intrinsic nature, innate positioning, natural mechanism and transcendental purpose. Satchitanand is the original and innate positioning of consciousness. It is the absolute and ultimate arriving. The modern and very contemporary scientific ideas of psychosynthesis and psychoenergetics also say the same thing. In very simple words, it is your own common sense. The core idea of it is that, Satchitanand being the Mool idea, it is already and well there in all living being. One does not have to create it, or find it, or teach it, or learn it, or propagate it. The ultimate goodness and wellness is within us. We just have to have it. Common sense is just there to be revealed and realized. All beings have this within them. It is so simple to sound true. For, we all have the mind training to accept goodness as something very complex and beyond our easy endeavors. That is why the wise of ancient wisdom have said, don't do anything, yet become everything. They say, give up everything, you get everything. They say, go where you began, you shall arrive. They say, what you experience outside is inside you. They say, seek the zero, get the infinity. They say, keep quiet, the music shall flow. They say, do not be, you shall be. Etc. All these seed words are pointing towards the fact that truth is not to be created or searched. It is already there. We just have to unravel and assimilate them with innocence of consciousness. We all pray our respective gods to guide us to be good. The fact remains, goodness is just a seed realism and very much singular, well within the easy reach of our simple endeavors. As this seed manifests itself in a complex structure of a giant tree with numerous branches and uncountable leaves and fruits, we all are led to believe, goodness is very complicated. It is never, it is just a seed. Plant the seed of this common sense in your mind and let it grow within your mortal being. Then, enjoy the diversity of goodness and be your own God. All rational minds have told us since ages, God is within us. They said, those attempting to find it outside are doing the mistake of uprooting a giant oak tree from the jungle and planting it in their house garden. Like seed, goodness grows within and it cannot be transplanted. Even if it happens, it would not survive long. The seed realism of goodness is accommodation. Acceptance of I with compassionate accommodation towards we, he and they. No doubt, one is designed to believe in I as the center of the universe, but then, the I needs to be compassionate and affectionate towards the existence of others in the periphery. This is what rational minds have called holism and assimilation. The liberty of periphery to be equitably, if not equally, as important as the center, and the duty of center to accommodate periphery in the liberty to be what it is. This holism is the easy and smoothly replicable model of divinity, a singularity of situationalism. The imagery of gods may be in plurality, divinity is however singular. Most rational minds have warned humanity of the dictatorship of singularity of elements other than the above-mentioned divinity. The dictatorship of all sorts, especially the dictatorship of subjective intelligence, dictatorship of parts, that of either the center or the periphery, is anathema as it kills the goodness. Only the dictatorship of holism is allowed. This dictatorship of compassion, accommodation and acceptance is welcome. God with us, we need none. Mahatma Gandhi had once written to compatriot in independence struggle, why do we care for some he owns company, Why should a person believing in God need the companionship of any other person? On the face value, it seems like a strange statement. When God is with us, should we need none? The lines seem to lead an average mind to this end itself. One needs to understand what Mahatma meant to say, and for that, we need to understand the context of the statement. He said it to bring home the value and inevitability of a noble end, of independence, for which all his contemporaries were struggling. Seen in this light, what he meant was to emphasize that an individual is so very unimportant in front of a noble collective cause. The trouble is, an average mind will often take a wrong notion of the above-said idea and accept God as an end in itself, with a feeling of its exclusivity. It would look wrong. On deeper analysis, one can realize that not only about God, but also about so many crucial issues of our lives, we humans have been made to acquire a notion, which is more misleading than anything is. It is because, it seems so, most of our favorite and acceptable notions and ideas are a product of our ancestors' then obsession with struggle that defined everything in their worldview. And true it was. Humanity has emerged and evolved through very tough and difficult times. Science and history tells us how smartly and beautifully adaptable our ancestors were to survive and bequeath us such a beautiful planet to us. It may seem that life can never be easy and this world can never be less cruel. However, this is no justification to color all our personal, societal, mental and spiritual benchmarks with the tint of struggle preoccupations. Life may always remain tough and cruel, but benchmarks of all human goodness must never be struggle but the beauty of love and compassion, both at personal and collective levels, which truly makes struggle one of the factors but never the core/prime factor. Humans and humanity should always remain the cardinal issue in divinity and all other goodness. There is a folklore that 500 years back, one of the great priests of India treated goddess Durga as his daughter and goddess in return actually served him as daughter. How beautiful a metaphor, this is divinity. Look at Shiva, the Hindu god of Trinity, popular for his innocence and compassion. Shiva is a beautiful metaphor for every human to follow. Every boy and girl would like his or her father to be like him. Shiva has been designed and metaphor to be humanity's pride figure of a father. The entity of fatherhood is ideally like his persona. All fathers should have this. Look at Durga, the most popular Hindu deity of power and energy. She is so beautiful and compassionate, like all mothers should be. She is equally endowed and mighty, as a mother always is. And, Vishnu, Hindu god of protection and provision. His imagery, as created in religious texts, is every girl's cherished husband material. Look at the metaphor of Hindu goddess Lakshmi, she is the quintessence of every parent's dream daughter. Even today, when a girl is born, people say, Lakshmi has come to the family. It needs to be checked. Is there any god or goddess who does not resemble anything but a human par excellence? Yes, devil forces in religions have faces other than human, resembling aliens and in all dreadfulness. This entire imagery is a beautiful metaphor of the spiritual positioning that within us is our God. We need our gods and goddesses and we have them around us. If not, it should, it must. In family and in society, we need to have these God models. Beyond this talk, in the 5 other books, which this stupid friend of yours has created for you, the descriptions of which I have provided below, we have talked in details about different aspects of cosmic mechanism and life and living realisms with focus on individual and subjective empowerment to optimize potentials for larger wellness and excellence. They shall help you evolve and design your own subjective and personalized model of wellness wisdom. These ebooks shall also help you optimize your potentials in day-to-day life and living. In each ebook, one aspect of life and living problems and troubles has been talked about in detail for easy and smooth understanding of an average reader. There too, we talk like friends. The efforts are directed at understanding the core mechanism and processes of life and living realisms in a novel approach, with holistic, assimilative and integrative perspective. This takes all good aspects of all wisdoms, old and new, and assimilates them for larger wellness and excellence of individuals. I affectionately invite you to go through the sample pages of these ebooks. Moreover, as your friend, I am always at your side to elaborate on any issue which you might have with you. We can talk and share more on them. You can mail me if you have any query, or if you wish to know more on any aspect of issues discussed in the ebooks. I shall always treasure your communication and shall be very prompt and supportive in my response. All my efforts are directed at generating larger wellness with all people with whom I share this beautiful earth. I share with you what I have internalized. It is such a huge privilege and joy for me. As I have already mentioned, I also learn and unlearn from you and all people with whom I share my consciousness. Give me this precious chance to learn and unlearn from you. Accept my gratitude. Being in absolute reception of love wins all fears, makes us rise above the process of preparedness to the ultimate stage of readiness. In this consciousness, all good and cherished ideals of humanity fall in our lap. They fill our being. Love lands us to ultimate empowerment of forgiveness. I most humbly say, I am in innocent reception of the perpetuity of utility of love amid life's futility. That is why I could muster up the courage to talk to you. I am happily sure you shall forgive your unworthy friend for his stupidities. Thank you so much for being with me and allowing me to share with you. Big thanks for your precious input in my charity. Wish you an empowered life, with the prosperity of the consciousness, which shall make you a genius problem solver and optimize your potentials. Santosh Jha. About your unworthy friend. People say, what conspire to make you what you finally become are always behind the veil of intangibility. Someone called it intangible effectors. Inquisitiveness was the soil I was born with, and the seeds these intangible effectors planted in me made me somewhat analytical. My long stint in media, in different capacities as journalist, as brand professional and strategic planning, conspired too. However, I must say it with all innocence at my behest that the chief conspirators of my making have been the loads of beautiful and multidimensional people, who traversed along me, in my life journey so far. The mutuality and innocence of love and compassion always prevailed and magically worked as the catalyst in my learning, and most importantly, unlearning from these people. Unconsciously, these amazing people also worked out to be the live theaters of my experiments with my life's scripts. Sharing with you all what I have here, is essentially my very modest way to express my gratitude for all of them and you, who affectionately shared my consciousness here. In my stupidities is my innocence of love for all my beautifully worthy conspirators. Other smashword titles by Santosh Jha. Naked solutions of dressed up life woes. Non-fiction, empowering consciousness, life wellness, personal excellence, word, 23,000 approx, language English short description. The world we live in, is what it is, neither good nor bad. It is people, who are the theatre of all pains as well as joys. The human mind is the most capable and instinctively galvanized mechanism to solve big problems. Still, the same human consciousness is the most potent trouble. The core trouble is, modern-day problems are so dressed up, partly by our complex environment and partly by our consciousness, that we fail to see the naked reality of the nature of problems. We can see them clearly, if we undress them. It is an art we all can master. How? Extended description. A solution of problems is not a big task. If you have a problem, you already know it. That solution is somewhere inherent and embedded in the problem itself. The milieu around us presents some factors in an arrangement, which stand in our disadvantage, at a particular stage of our life positioning, and we call the outcome of such an arrangement as a problem. Often, solution presents itself as some alternative arrangement or placement of the same factors in such a way that they turn advantageous for us, hence qualifying as a solution. in most cases, especially the modern-day problems we face, the artistry of arriving at solutions is not in creating or generating something externally but in rearranging and repositioning the already present factors and elements in some alternative ways. That is why, we need little action but loads of calm and objective reception in analyzing the factors that essentially constitute a problem. We talk like friends about the mechanisms of problems and solutions in an assimilative and integrative way. Tags empowerment, higher consciousness, problem-solving, self-exploration, mind positioning, receptive mode awareness, life randomization, multidimensionality of realism, new thinking, true intelligence, personal assimilation and integration, holistic worldview, symbiotic subconscious, sensory symmetry, psychological poise, unlearning, wisdom, generic and specific subject, relationship realisms, love and wellness, winning genius. Habitual hero, the art of winning. Non-fiction, empowering consciousness, life wellness, personal excellence, word, 19,000 approx, language English. Short description: in all of us, there is this definite winner, the genius of this universe. However, this champion is what we can label as random warrior, as it wins but not always. We all have the determination, patience, courage, discipline and the mastery to be a sure and sustained all-weather all-season hero. However, as many of us miss the knowledge and acceptance of this mechanism of winning, this warrior turns out to be only a random winner, unable to sustain the artistry of winning, to qualify as a habitual hero. Extended description. There is a definite hero in all of us. We all have an inbuilt and natural ability, a born facility, which makes us eligible for understanding the mechanism of winning. The only trouble is, eligibility is not automatic qualification. All of us are born with a facility called instinctive inquisitiveness. This is our born eligibility. However, we need to orient and align our inquisitiveness towards objective knowledge to qualify as an intelligent person, who is the master of mechanisms, not only the puppet of mechanism. It is the mind consciousness, which makes us a random warrior, and it is the same mind, which holds the potential of we being the all-weather and all-season hero, the cherished pole position, for which we all have born eligibility. We talk like friends about this mechanism of being a habitual hero in an assimilative and integrative way. Tags empowerment, higher consciousness, mechanism of winning, self-exploration, mind positioning, receptive mode awareness, life randomization, multidimensionality of realism, new thinking, true intelligence, personal assimilation and integration, holistic worldview, symbiotic subconscious, sensory symmetry, psychological poise, unlearning, wisdom, generic and specific subject, relationship realisms, love and wellness. Maya and Leela, utility in life's futility. Non-fiction, empowering consciousness, life wellness, personal excellence, word, 21,000 approx, language English short description. Most of us, living in modern contemporary world of complexities, conflicts and confusion, have questions as what a good and righteous person should consider as perpetual utility in life, amidst the general feeling of futility of everything around. What is this singular life and living positioning, which can make us live the life in a perpetually joyous state of consciousness, endowed with true utilities, shunning away all those futilities, which land us in pain and regret? Extended description. Almost everything, which has a utility at one stage of life, stands a good chance of qualifying for futility later. For all thinking people, the larger conflict of life and living experiences is unraveled and expressed in multidimensional cyclicality of utility and futility. The inquisitive mind and its curious energy cannot leave a thinking person to rest in perpetuity of peace, as the world we live in is colossal and the questions of life and living conflicts and conundrums are infinite. However, we all need to be sure that this unsettling energy of conflict is a huge gift, not a burden. Hundreds of years back, the old wisdom, Spiritualism and philosophy offered us sure answers, but in time, they have lost trust with us somehow, as they seem to somehow misfit with modern ideas. We shall talk like friends about these issues in the light of a new thinking, which assimilates and integrates all wisdoms, spiritualism, philosophy and science. Being in true utilities of life is essential, as it lands us in perpetuity of infinite joy and wellness. Tags empowerment, higher consciousness, utility and futility, karma, self-exploration, mind positioning, receptive mode awareness, life randomization, multidimensionality of realism, new thinking, true intelligence, contemporary spiritualism, assimilation and integration, holistic symbiotic wisdom, sensory symmetry, psychological poise, unlearning, wisdom, generic and specific subject, immortality, life purpose and purity. Why we flop in love. Non-fiction, empowering consciousness, life wellness, personal excellence, word, 20,000 approx, language English. Short description: love is ideally accepted with three elements of mystery, magic and marvel. The three Ms land most of us in inexplicable troubles and pains of love. The magnificent dualism is, love's mystery makes it flamboyantly attractive and joyful. Still, the mysticism engenders loads of confusion, making many of us flop in love. Success of love is in non-dualistic positioning, which is simple and practical realism, most of us refuse to accept. Extended description. The dualism is in the mysticism, magic and marvel of love. This mysticism of love is what most lovers get attracted to initially. This suits the consciousness of love. This marvel of love gives the men and women huge kicks of life. Young minds get huge thrills in journeying amidst the mist of mysticism of love, as precariousness of the enterprise always has its own joy. Similar is the human desire, when it comes to religion and spiritualism. Mysticism is preferred state here too. However, this mysticism further confuses those in love and faith, and this confusion in turn leads to calamitous patterns of behaviors and actions in love. The resultant pain and chaos is cyclic. However, the new thinking explains hitherto unexplored aspects of the physical, biochemical, emotional and other mechanisms and processes of love, as human mind handles them, in a holistic, assimilative and integrative way. This surely takes away lots of mysticism, magic and marvel out of the age-old notion of love and archetypal imagery of love in society. However, it is hugely helpful in clearing the mist of confusion and chaos around the very core idea of love. This surely makes us be successful in love and relish true love and absolute intimacy. Tags: love, intimacy, wellness, homeostasis, poise, magic, marvel, dualism and non-dualism, empowerment, higher consciousness, mechanism of winning, self-exploration, mind positioning, personal assimilation and integration, holistic worldview, unlearning, wisdom, subjectivism, relationship realisms. Back to bliss, a journey to zero. Literary fiction, novel, a love story in catalytic contemporary culture of conflicts, word 78,000 approx, language English. Short description. Battling against hypocrisies, sadomasochism and perfunctory pursuits of pop benchmarks of successes, he refuses the passion-oriented male worldview of karma and life's purposes. Metamorphosed by compassion, that love's innocence fills him with, he opts for a journey that takes him far away from the stupidity of self-worth, calculated in terms of personal utility, individualistic possession and unfettered consumption. Does he arrive? Extended description. Mayank Misra, a 34-year-old news editor with a newspaper in an Indian city, takes up the challenges in his personal as well as professional lives, caught between the conflicting agendas of passion and compassion. His passion calls him to battle the hypocrisies, which the popular benchmarks of the societal notions fill up his professional as well as personal universe with. Then, the innocence of love and total intimacy exposes him to compassion, leading him to diametrically opposite life energies, marked by forgiveness. He realizes, he's standing beyond the best of the potentials and capabilities of his accultured and uninhibited mind is his own God, but he needs an unlearning mechanism to delete the wrong programming of his mind. In the contemporary worldview, which paints the hypocrisy of art and lies about idealisms, he templates sketches of heroic moments of personal crises to break free from the suffocation of the optionlessness of pop success, with humble reception of the sanity of simplicity and innocence. How he manages his personal and societal conflicts, rises above his encumbrances and finally picks up a road less traversed for a journey, which makes him feel he has already arrived, sums up the novel. Tags literary fiction, love story, media ills, corporate conundrums, behavioral corruption, personal and societal conflicts, pop pursuits, hypocrisy, sadomasochism, success benchmarks, heroic crisis, compassion, intimacy, innocence of love, gender neutrality, unlearning in love, accultured mind, metamorphosis, forgiveness, sanity of simplicity, life journey, optionlessness, arriving. Do kindly write to me. stwrite@mail.com. A true friend is just an effective catalyst, facilitating a series of learning and unlearning, by optimizing painful processes. Perpetuity of affection and compassion, a hallmark of friendship, is one brilliant utility in life's futility. As your friend, I shall always be in complete reception of your ideas and emotions and shall cherish the utility of communicating with you to expand the universe of mutual wellness. Thank you so much. Connect with Santosh Jha. Facebook, https://www.facebook.com/profile.php ID equals 100032782135112. Google Plus, https://plus.google.com/10168748647776850327 Partnered equals ogp0. Blog, http://zerostick.blogspot.in. Smashwords, https://www.smashwords.com/profile/view/Santosh Jha.